The rain against the reinforced glass of the trauma bay windows was not a gentle sound. It was a rhythmic, hammering assault, matching the frantic tempo of the monitors inside room 4. The air smelled of antiseptic, copper, and the sharp electric tang of fear. In the center of the room, surrounded by a phalanx of white coats and blue scrubs, lay a man who looked less like a patient and more like a ruin. His chest rose in shallow, jagged hitches, each breath a battle won against collapsing lungs. Tubes snaked from his arms, his neck, his nose, tethering him to the machinery that kept him anchored to the world of the living. Standing at the foot of the bed, invisible to the bustling team, was Alina Vance. She held a tray of sterile instruments, her knuckles white as she gripped the metal edge. She was 28 years old, with hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to pull the skin of her face taut, erasing any hint of softness. Her eyes, a pale, watery gray, were fixed on the patient's monitor, but no one looked at her. To the doctors swirling around the bed like sharks in a feeding frenzy, Alina was furniture. She was the quiet nurse, the one who fetched supplies, the one who cleaned up the mess, the one who did not speak unless spoken to, and even then only in whispers. Dr. Marcus Thorne, the attending physician and the undisputed king of this particular kingdom, barked an order. His voice was loud, designed to dominate the space, to drown out the uncertainty that lurked in the corners of every trauma case. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with hair that never moved and a smile that never reached his eyes. He glanced at the monitor, then at the patient, then at the junior resident trembling beside him. "Push another amp of epinephrine," Thorne said, his tone bored as if he were ordering lunch. "And get me a central line. Now he's crashing." Alina's eyes flicked to the patient's chart, which she had memorized 10 minutes ago when she first wheeled him in. She saw the history. She saw the medications. She saw the subtle, almost imperceptible tremor in the patient's left hand before he had lost consciousness. She saw the dilated pupils that didn't react to the light in the way they should. And she heard the sound of his breathing, not the wet rattle of fluid-filled lungs, but the high-pitched, strained whistle of an obstructed airway that was closing from the inside out. "Dr. Thorne," Alina said. Her voice was soft, barely audible over the beep of the heart monitor. Thorne didn't turn. "Did I ask for commentary, Nurse Vance? I asked for action." "His airway is swelling," Alina said, louder this time, though still controlled. "It's not cardiac arrest, it's anaphylaxis. If you push more epinephrine without securing the airway first, the swelling will seal his throat completely. He needs a cricothyrotomy, not a central line." The room went silent for a fraction of a second. The junior resident stopped moving. The respiratory therapist paused with a mask in his hand. Then Dr. Thorne turned slowly, his face a mask of cold amusement. He looked at Alina as if she were a stain on his pristine shoes. "Anaphylaxis?" Thorne laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Look at the vitals, Vance. Blood pressure is bottoming out. Heart rate is erratic. This is cardiogenic shock. You're confusing a heart attack with an allergy because you read one article on the internet last night. Do your job, hold the tray, don't think." He turned back to the patient. "Ignore her, push the epi, prepare for intubation." Alina felt the heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from a fury so cold it felt like ice in her veins. She knew she was right. She could feel it in her bones, in the way the patient's skin was flushing a deep, angry red beneath the pallor, in the way his neck muscles were straining against the collar of his shirt. But she also knew her place. In the hierarchy of St. Jude's Memorial Hospital, she was at the bottom. Thorne was at the top. And in this ecosystem, truth was subordinate to rank. She lowered her head. She tightened her grip on the tray. She watched as the resident pushed the medication into the IV line. She watched as Thorne picked up the laryngoscope, ready to force a tube down a throat that was rapidly becoming a tomb. And that's when the doors to the trauma bay burst open. The wind from the hallway swept into the room, carrying with it the scent of wet pavement and urgency. 2 paramedics rushed in, followed by a man in a dark suit who looked entirely out of place in the sterile chaos of the emergency department. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a posture that suggested military precision. His face was grim, his eyes scanning the room with a speed and intensity that made even Dr. Thorne pause. "Where is he?" the man in the suit asked. His voice was low, but it cut through the noise like a knife. Thorne straightened up, wiping his hands on a gauze pad. "We have a critic. Al patient in here. Who are you? You can't be in here without PPE." The man ignored him. He walked past the barrier tape, past the nurses, straight to the side of the bed. He looked down at the unconscious man, and for the first time, Alina saw something crack in the stranger's composed facade. A flicker of panic, a flash of recognition. Commander, the man whispered. Thorne stepped forward, offended by the intrusion. Sir, I must ask you to leave. We are performing a life-saving procedure. If you interfere, I will have security remove you. The man in the suit turned to Thorne. His eyes were hard, flinty things. You're killing him. Thorne bristled. Excuse me, I am Dr. Marcus Thorne, Chief of Emergency Medicine. I know what I am doing. You're intubating a man with a closed glottis, the stranger said, his voice rising. You're pushing vasopressors on a patient who is going into distributive shock. Look at his neck. Look at the hives on his chest. This isn't a heart attack. It's an allergic reaction to the contrast dye from his CT scan an hour ago. Why wasn't this flagged? Thorne sneered. We don't have time for amateur diagnoses. Nurse, call security. Elena didn't move. She couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the stranger and then on the patient. The stranger reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, laminated card. He slapped it onto the counter next to Elena's tray. I am Special Agent Miller, Department of Defense Inspector General. That man on the table is Admiral James Sterling. And if he dies because you were too arrogant to listen to your staff, I will ensure that every single person in this room spends the rest of their career answering to a federal grand jury. The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the erratic, dying beep of the heart monitor. Thorne's face went pale. He looked at the card, then at the patient, then at Elena. For a second, doubt flickered in his eyes. But pride is a powerful drug, and Thorne was addicted. Admiral or not, Thorne said, his voice shaking slightly, the protocol for unstable hemodynamics is clear. I am following standard of care. If you want to second-guess me, do it after he's stable. He turned back to the patient. Intubate now. Elena closed her eyes. She heard the click of the laryngoscope. She heard the gasp of the resident as he tried to insert the tube. She heard the sudden, sharp alarm of the oxygen saturation monitor dropping below 80%. 70. 60. He's desaturating, the respiratory therapist shouted. Keep trying, Thorne yelled. Elena opened her eyes. She looked at Agent Miller. He was watching her, not Thorne her. He had seen her speak up. He had seen her try. And in that look she saw a question. Can you fix this? She didn't hesitate. She dropped the tray. The metal clattered to the floor, a shocking noise in the tense room. She stepped forward, pushing past the stunned resident. Move, she said. Thorne spun around. Vance, get back. No, Elena said. Her voice was no longer a whisper, it was steel. He has 30 seconds before hypoxic brain damage becomes permanent. You are failing, let me work. She didn't wait for permission. She grabbed the scalpel from the crash cart. She didn't look at Thorne, she looked at the Admiral's neck. She found the landmark, the cricothyroid membrane, with her fingers, feeling the cartilage beneath the swelling skin. It was a muscle memory so deep it felt like breathing. Bag him, she ordered the respiratory therapist. High flow now. The therapist, terrified but instinctively recognizing authority, obeyed. Elena raised the scalpel. Her hand was steady, perfectly, unnaturally steady. She made the incision, precise, clean, one cut. She inserted the tracheostomy tube. She connected the bag. She squeezed. Air rushed into the Admiral's lungs. The chest rose. The oxygen saturation monitor beeped once, twice, and then climbed. 85, 90, 95. The color returned to the Admiral's face. The erratic heart rhythm slowed, stabilizing into a strong, steady beat. Elena stepped back. She placed the scalpel on the counter. She wiped her hands on her scrubs. She didn't look at Thorne. She didn't look at Agent Miller. She looked at the floor. The room was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Dr. Thorne stared at the tube in the Admiral's neck. He stared at Elena. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, gaping shock. He had been wrong, publicly, catastrophically. And the person who had corrected him was the woman he had treated like furniture. Agent Miller let out a long, slow breath. He looked at Elena, really looked at her. He studied her face, her posture, the way she held herself. And then he did something strange. He narrowed his eyes. He tilted his head. Who are you? He asked. Elena didn't answer. She just picked up her tray from the floor. Get out, Thorne whispered, his voice was trembling with rage. Get out of my ER. You're done. You're fired. Get out before I call the police for assault. Elena looked up. She met Thorne's eyes. There was no fear in her gaze, only a profound, weary sadness. I saved his life, she said quietly. You violated protocol, Thorne shouted, regaining his volume, trying to reclaim his power. You performed an unauthorized surgical procedure. You assaulted a senior physician. You're finished, Vance. Security. Two guards appeared at the door. They looked uncomfortable. They had seen what happened. They had heard the alarm stop, but Thorne was the boss. Alina nodded. She set the tray down. She walked toward the door. As she passed Agent Miller, he reached out and touched her arm, just for a second. Wait, he said. Thorne snapped. Don't touch her. She's being escorted out. Miller ignored him. He leaned in close to Alina. He whispered something so quiet that no one else could hear it. But Alina froze. Her eyes widened. She looked at Miller, really looked at him for the first time. And then she walked out. If you are feeling the tension in your chest right now, if you are wondering who Alina really is and why that agent whispered to her, take a moment to hit the like button. It helps us bring these stories to light. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We have many more tales of hidden heroes and unjust systems to share. Your support keeps the narrative alive. Now let's step back. Let's go back 3 months. Before the rain, before the Admiral, before the scalpel. Let's understand how Alina Vance ended up holding a tray in Dr. Thorne's ER and why the world had forgotten who she truly was. St. Jude's Memorial Hospital was a fortress of modern medicine, located in the heart of Seattle. It was a place of glass and steel, of high-tech diagnostics and prestigious fellowships. It was also a place of rigid hierarchies, where reputation was currency and mistakes were buried under layers of bureaucracy. Alina Vance had arrived at St. Jude's 6 months ago. She was hired as a level II trauma nurse, a position that required skill, endurance, and a thick skin. But from day one, Alina was different. She was quiet, too quiet. She didn't participate in the break-room gossip. She didn't join the afterwork drinks. She didn't complain about the long shifts or the difficult patients. She simply worked. Her colleagues found her unsettling. There was a precision to her movements that felt unnatural. She never dropped anything. She never forgot a dosage. She never missed a change in a patient's condition. But instead of earning respect, this efficiency earned her suspicion. In a workplace where everyone was striving to be seen, Alina's invisibility was interpreted as aloofness, or worse, incompetence masked by silence. Dr. Marcus Thorne had noticed her immediately. Thorne was a man who thrived on attention. He was the star of the department, the one featured in hospital brochures, the one invited to speak at conferences. He believed that medicine was a performance and he was the lead actor. Nurses were his supporting cast. They were there to hand him props, to applaud his successes, and to absorb his failures. Alina did not applaud. One afternoon, during a routine shift, Thorne had misdiagnosed a young woman with abdominal pain as gastritis. He had prescribed antacids and sent her home. Alina had reviewed the chart. She had noticed a slight elevation in the woman's white blood cell count and a tenderness in the lower right quadrant that Thorne had dismissed. She had approached him. "Dr. Thorne," she had said, "Mrs. Gable's pain is migrating and her fever is spiking. I think we should rule out appendicitis." Thorne had laughed. He had patted her on the shoulder, a gesture that felt condescending rather than comforting. "Vance, stick to taking vitals. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know an upset stomach when I see one. Don't try to play doctor." 2 hours later, Mrs. Gable returned via ambulance. Her appendix had ruptured. She was in septic shock. Thorne had been furious, not because he had made a mistake, but because Alina had pointed it out. He had called her into his office. "You undermined me," he had said, his voice cold. "In front of the residents, in front of the staff. Do you have any idea how damaging that is?" "I was trying to help the patient," Alina had replied. "You were trying to show off," Thorne had snapped. "Let me make one thing clear. You are here to follow orders. If you ever question my judgment in public again, I will make sure you never work in this city again. Do you understand?" Alina had nodded. She had said nothing. She had walked out. But Thorne didn't stop there. He began a campaign of subtle harassment. He assigned her the most difficult patients. He criticized her documentation for minor errors. He excluded her from team meetings. He made jokes about her silence, calling her the ghost or the mute. The other nurses, afraid of crossing Thorne, joined in. They stopped inviting her to lunch. They stopped covering for her when she needed a break. Alina became an island in a sea of hostility. Yet she endured. She endured because she had no choice. She needed this job. She needed the insurance. She needed the anonymity. There were breadcrumbs, though, small clues that hinted at a deeper story. One night, during a mass casualty incident involving a bus crash, the ER was overwhelmed. Chaos reigned. Doctors were shouting. Nurses were running. In the middle of the storm, Alina moved with a calm that was eerie. She triaged patients with a speed and accuracy that baffled the charge nurse. She identified a tension pneumothorax in a teenager before the X-ray machine was even free. She inserted a needle decompression kit with a single, fluid motion. When the dust settled, the charge nurse had looked at her with wonder. "How did you know?" she had asked. "That wasn't in the protocol." Alina had shrugged. "Just a guess," she had said. Another time, a veteran patient had come in with PTSD triggers. He was agitated, violent, refusing treatment. The security guards were ready to restrain him. Alina had walked over. She hadn't spoken. She had simply stood in front of him, adopted a specific stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands open and visible, and lowered her gaze. She had hummed a low, rhythmic tune. The veteran had stopped screaming. He had looked at her, confused, and then calmed down. He had whispered, "Semper Fi," before letting them treat him. Alina had walked away before anyone could ask what that meant. These moments were fleeting. They were dismissed as luck or intuition or quirks. No one connected the dots. No one wondered why a quiet nurse knew how to decompress a chest or calm a combat veteran. They only saw the surface, the shy, awkward woman who couldn't stand up to Dr. Thorne. But Alina carried a weight. Every night she went home to a small, sparse apartment. She didn't have photos on the walls, she didn't have mementos. She had a box locked in her closet. Inside that box was a uniform, not scrubs, a camouflage uniform, and a medal, a Navy cross. Alina Vance was not just a nurse. She was a former corpsman, a Fleet Marine Force corpsman attached to a SEAL team. She had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq. She had performed surgeries in sandstorms. She had held men together while they bled out in helicopters. She had earned the call sign Doc, not because she was a doctor, but because she was the best medic her unit had ever seen. She had left the service 5 years ago, not because she wanted to, but because she had failed. On her last mission, a child had died, a child she had tried to save. The guilt had been too heavy to carry in the field. She had left the military, changed her name, and tried to disappear into the civilian world. She had chosen nursing because it was the only thing she knew how to do. But she had chosen to be quiet because she believed she didn't deserve to be heard. She believed she was paying for her sin, and Dr. Thorne's abuse was just part of the penance. We often judge people by their loudest moments, but character is revealed in the quiet ones. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt underestimated or silenced, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts on workplace hierarchy. Your voices matter here. Now let's return to the present, the day after the incident with Admiral Sterling. Alina arrived at work at 6:00 a.m. as usual. She expected to be turned away at the door. She expected security to be waiting. She had packed her belongings the night before, just in case. But when she swiped her badge, the light turned green. The door unlocked. She walked into the locker room. It was empty. She changed into her scrubs. She tied her hair back. She walked onto the floor. The atmosphere was different. The usual chatter was muted. Nurses avoided eye contact. When she walked past the nurses' station, the charge nurse, Sarah, looked up. Sarah's face was pale. "Alina," Sarah said, her voice was shaky. "Dr. Thorne wants to see you in his office now." Alina nodded. She walked to Thorne's office. She knocked. "Enter," Thorne's voice came from inside. Alina opened the door. Thorne was sitting behind his desk. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, but his expression was triumphant. "Close the door," he said. Alina closed it. "You're lucky," Thorne said. He didn't look at her. He was signing papers. "The Admiral woke up this morning. He's stable. He's asking questions." Alina said nothing. "He's asking about the person who saved his life," Thorne continued. "He's asking about the nurse who performed the cricothyrotomy." Alina remained silent. "I told him," Thorne said, finally looking up. A cruel smile played on his lips. "I told him that I supervised the procedure, that I guided you, that it was a team effort led by me. Because if I admitted that you acted alone, that you disobeyed a direct order, the hospital would be liable for malpractice. So I took credit, and in exchange, I'm letting you stay." Alina felt a surge of nausea. He was stealing her act, he was stealing her integrity. Again. "However," Thorne said, standing up, "you are on probation, indefinite probation. You will not speak to patients unless spoken to. You will not make decisions. You will not interact with doctors unless necessary. You are essentially a glorified orderly. If you step out of line again, if you so much as breathe wrong, I will fire you, and I will blacklist you from every hospital in the state. Do you understand?" Alina looked at him. She saw the fear behind his arrogance. He was afraid, afraid that the truth would come out, afraid that he had been exposed as a fraud. And so he was doubling down. He was crushing her to keep himself safe. "Yes," Alina said. "Good," Thorne said. "Get out, go clean room 3, it's messy." Alina walked out. She went to room 3. It was indeed messy. Blood stains on the sheets, broken glass on the floor. She began to clean. She scrubbed. She wiped. She emptied the trash. As she worked, she thought about the Admiral. She thought about Agent Miller. She thought about the whisper. Echo 7. That was what he had whispered. Echo 7. It was her old call sign, from the teams. No one knew that call sign. It had been classified. It had been buried with her past. How did Agent Miller know? And why had he let Thorne take credit? Alina finished cleaning. She sat on the edge of the bed. She put her head in her hands. She felt trapped. She had saved a life and she had been punished for it. She had been erased. Again. But something had shifted. The whisper had unlocked a door she had kept shut for 5 years. She stood up. She walked to the window. She looked out at the rain. It was still falling. She made a decision. She wouldn't fight Thorne, not yet. She would wait. She would watch, and she would be ready. Because if Agent Miller knew who she was, then others might too. And the past, she knew, had a way of catching up. Before we dive into the escalation, take a second to subscribe if you haven't. We're building a community of people who value justice and competence. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next chapter. Your engagement helps us tell these stories with the depth they deserve. The next week was a blur of humiliation. Thorne kept his word. He stripped Alina of all responsibility. She was assigned to transport patients, to fetch labs, to clean rooms. She was treated like a servant. The other nurses, sensing Thorne's vindictiveness, distanced themselves further. Alina was alone. But she observed. She watched Thorne's interactions. She watched how he cut corners, how he bullied residents, how he ignored safety protocols to save time. She documented everything, not in the official charts, but in a small notebook she kept in her pocket. Dates, times, incidents, names. She wasn't planning revenge. She was planning survival. She knew that Thorne was a ticking bomb, and sooner or later he would explode. On Thursday, a new patient arrived. A young man, 22 years old, brought in by police after a car accident. He was unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. Thorne took the case. CT scan, Thorne ordered. Stat. Alina was tasked with transporting the patient to radiology. As she wheeled the gurney down the hall, she noticed something. The patient's pupils were unequal. One was blown, the other was pinpoint. She stopped, she checked his vitals. His blood pressure was rising, his heart rate was slowing. Cushing S triad, signs of increased intracranial pressure, a brain bleed. She rushed him to radiology. The technician scanned him. The images appeared on the screen. Alina looked at them. She saw it immediately. A subdural hematoma, expanding, compressing the brainstem. She ran back to the ER. She found Thorne in the break room, drinking coffee. "Dr. Thorne," she said, "the patient in Bay 2, he has a subdural hematoma. It's expanding. He needs neurosurgery, now." Thorne sighed. He put down his cup. "Vance, I told you, no diagnosing. The radiologist will read the scan." "The radiologist is backed up," Alina said. "It will take an hour. He doesn't have an hour. He has minutes." Thorne stood up. He walked close to her. He invaded her space. "You are testing my patients. Go back to your duties, or I will write you up for insubordination." "He will die," Alina said. "Then he will die," Thorne said. "And it will be on the radiologist's head, not mine. Now move." Alina hesitated. She looked at the clock. She looked at Thorne. She knew she couldn't force him, but she couldn't let the boy die. She walked away. She went to the nurse's station. She picked up the phone. She dialed. "Neurosurgery." "This is Nurse Vance," she said. "I have a patient in Bay 2, unconscious, blown pupil, CT shows expanding subdural. Dr. Thorne is delaying consultation. Please come down immediately." She hung up. 10 minutes later, Dr. Aris Thorne, no relation to Marcus but a rival in the hospital politics, stormed into the ER. He was the chief of neurosurgery. He was angry. "Who is responsible for patient 402? He bellowed. Marcus Thorne stepped forward. "I am. What's the problem?" "The problem," Aris said, is that you have a boy herniating his brainstem while you drink coffee. Why wasn't I called? Marcus Thorne paled. I was waiting for the formal read. Waiting, Eris shouted. You killed him, well, not yet, but he's in bad shape. Get him to Orwan now. The team scrambled. The boy was rushed to surgery. He survived, but with significant brain damage. The aftermath was swift. An internal review was launched. Marcus Thorne was blamed, but he was clever. He twisted the narrative. He claimed that Nurse Vance had failed to communicate the urgency. He claimed that she had not alerted him properly. He produced falsified notes in the chart that suggested he had ordered the consult hours earlier. Alina was called into a meeting with HR and the hospital administrator, Ms. Graves. Nurse Vance, Ms. Graves said. She was a stern woman, more concerned with liability than truth. Dr. Thorne alleges that you neglected to relay critical information. Is this true? Alina looked at Thorne. He was smiling, a small, smug smile. No, Alina said. I told him immediately. Dr. Thorne says otherwise, Graves said, and the chart supports his timeline. The chart was altered, Alina said. Graves frowned. That is a serious accusation. Do you have proof? Alina touched her pocket, her notebook, but she knew it wouldn't hold up. It wasn't official, it was hearsay. No, Alina said. Then I have no choice, Graves said. You are suspended pending further investigation. Hand over your badge. Alina handed over her badge. She walked out of the hospital, again. This time it felt different. This time she wasn't just sad. She was angry, a righteous, burning anger. She had tried to do the right thing, and she had been crushed. She walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat. She cried. For the first time in 5 years, she cried. She cried for the boy. She cried for herself. She cried for the injustice of it all. And then her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She answered. Echo 7, a voice said. Alina froze. Who is this? My name is Miller. We met in the ER last week. What do you want? I want to meet you tonight 8 p.m. The docks, Pier 42, come alone. Why? Because, Miller said, Admiral Sterling wants to thank you, and because I think you're in danger. Thorne isn't just a bully, Alina. He's part of something bigger, and you just stepped on a toe. The line went dead. Alina stared at the phone. Her heart pounded. Danger? What did he mean? She looked at the hospital in the rearview mirror. It loomed like a monster. She started the car. She drove to the docks. Stories like this remind us that truth often hides in plain sight. If you're enjoying this journey, please leave a comment. What do you think Agent Miller knows? Your theories help shape our community discussion. And don't forget to like this video. It signals to others that this story is worth their time. Pier 42 was dark. The fog rolled in from the Puget Sound, thick and cold. Alina parked her car. She stepped out. She wore a hoodie, her hands in her pockets. She felt vulnerable, exposed. A black sedan was parked near the end of the pier. The window rolled down. Agent Miller sat in the driver's seat. Get in, he said. Alina hesitated, then she got in. Miller didn't start the car. He turned to her. Admiral Sterling is awake, he said. He remembers everything. He remembers you saving him. He remembers Thorne trying to kill him. Why didn't you stop it? Alina asked. Because I needed to see what you would do, Miller said. I needed to confirm who you are. I'm a nurse, Alina said. No, Miller said. You're Petty Officer First Class Alina Vance, U.S. Navy, SEAL Team 4, medic. You received the Navy Cross for extracting a wounded operative under heavy fire in Kandahar. You disappeared 5 years ago. Why? Alina looked out the window. The water lapped against the pilings. I failed, she whispered. You didn't fail, Miller said. You were sacrificed, your unit was compromised. Intel was leaked. The child you tried to save, it was a trap. You weren't supposed to survive, but you did, and you carried the guilt for a mistake that wasn't yours. Alina turned to him, tears welled in her eyes. How do you know this? Because I investigated it, Miller said. And because Admiral Sterling was the commanding officer of the task force. He knows who you are. He's been looking for you. For 5 years, to thank you, to apologize. Alina shook her head. It doesn't matter, I'm nobody now, I'm just a nurse. Not anymore, Miller said. Thorne is dirty, Alina. He's not just incompetent, he's corrupt. He's working with a pharmaceutical company. They're pushing a new drug, a cardiac drug. Thorne is prescribing it off-label, ignoring side effects, covering up adverse events. The Admiral was part of an investigation into this. That's why he was at the hospital. He was gathering evidence. Thorne tried to kill him to stop the investigation. Elena's blood ran cold. And me. You're a witness, Miller said. And you're a threat. Thorne knows you're smart. He knows you suspect something. That's why he's trying to destroy you, to discredit you. If you're a bad nurse, no one will believe you if you speak out. What do I do? Elena asked. You fight back, Miller said. But you can't do it alone. You need proof, and you need allies. I have no allies, Elena said. You have me, Miller said. And you have the Admiral, and you have your training. You're not just a nurse, Elena. You're a warrior. Act like one. He handed her a flash drive. This contains Thorne's emails, his prescriptions, his communications with the pharma rep. It's enough to bring him down, but you need to get it into the system, officially. Through the proper channels. If you leak it, they'll bury it. If you submit it through the hospital's compliance board with the Admiral's backing, it sticks. How do I get it to the board? Elena asked. There's a meeting tomorrow, Miller said. The board of directors, Thorne will be there, the administrator will be there. You need to be there. I'm suspended, Elena said. Not for long, Miller said. The Admiral is making a call tonight. You'll be reinstated, and you'll be invited to the meeting as a witness. Elena took the flash drive. It felt heavy in her hand. Why me, she asked. Why not just arrest him? Because we need a public reckoning, Miller said. We need to show that the system works, that justice prevails, and we need you to claim your dignity. You've been hiding for 5 years. It's time to come out. Elena looked at the flash drive, then at Miller. Okay, she said. The turning point is here. The hero has the weapon. But will she use it? If you're on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button. We're nearing the climax, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Share this with a friend who loves a good underdog story. The next morning, Elena received a call from HR. Her suspension was lifted. She was requested to attend the board of directors meeting at 10 a.m., mandatory attendance. She arrived at the hospital at 9 a.m. She walked through the doors. Heads turned, whispers followed her. But this time she didn't look down. She walked with her head high. She walked with purpose. She went to the conference room. It was a large, glass-walled room on the top floor. The view of the city was breathtaking. The board members were seated around a long table. Ms. Graves was there. Dr. Thorne was there. He looked nervous. He kept checking his watch. Admiral Sterling was there. He was in a wheelchair, but he looked strong. His eyes were sharp. He nodded at Elena when she entered. Elena sat in the back. She held the flash drive in her pocket. The meeting began. Ms. Graves spoke about budget cuts, about efficiency, about reputation. Then Admiral Sterling spoke. Thank you for having me, he said. His voice was gravelly but powerful. I am here to discuss a matter of patient safety and institutional integrity. Thorne shifted in his seat. Admiral, I'm glad you're recovering, but I'm not sure this is the appropriate forum. It is exactly the appropriate forum, Sterling interrupted. Because I was nearly killed in this hospital by negligence, by arrogance, and by corruption. The room went silent. Sterling looked at Thorne. Dr. Thorne, you attempted to intubate me despite clear signs of anaphylaxis. You ignored your staff. You endangered my life. Why? Thorne sweated. It was a clinical judgment call, Admiral. I stand by my actions. Do you? Sterling asked. Then explain this. He projected a document onto the screen. It was an email from Thorne to a representative of Vexacker Pharmaceuticals. Push the trials, ignore the adverse reports. I'll handle the staff. The bonus is worth it. Thorne's face went white. That's forged. Is it? Sterling asked. Because we have the metadata, we have the bank records, we have the testimony of 3 other nurses who were threatened into silence. He looked at Elena. Nurse Vance, please stand. Elena stood. Nurse Vance saved my life, Sterling said. She acted with courage and competence, and in return Dr. Thorne tried to destroy her career. Why? Because she was a threat, because she knew the truth. Thorne stood up. This is absurd. She's a disgraced employee. She's unstaffed. Am I? Elena asked. Her voice was clear, loud. She walked to the front of the room. She plugged the flash drive into the projector. Files appeared on the screen. Prescriptions, patient logs, cover-ups. I documented everything, Elena said. Every lie, every shortcut, every patient harmed, I have names, I have dates, I have proof. She looked at Thorne. You called me quiet, you called me invisible, but I was watching, and now everyone sees. Thorne lunged at her. You bitch. Two security guards who had been stationed at the door intercepted him. They pinned him to the wall. Ms. Graves stared at the screen. She looked at Thorne, she looked at Alina. Call the police, Graves said. Her voice was trembling. And call the medical board. Thorne screamed, he struggled, but it was over. Alina stood there. She felt a weight lift off her shoulders, a weight she had carried for 5 years. Admiral Sterling wheeled over to her. He took her hand. Thank you, Doc, he said. Alina smiled. For the first time in years, she smiled. The villain has fallen, but the story isn't over. We need to see the aftermath, the redemption. If you're feeling satisfied, please hit the like button. It's a small gesture, but it means the world to us. And subscribe if you want to see more stories of justice served. The fallout was swift. Dr. Marcus Thorne was arrested. He was charged with fraud, negligence, and attempted murder. His medical license was revoked. The hospital settled with the victims. The pharmaceutical company was investigated. Alina was hailed as a hero. The media descended on St. Jude S. They wanted interviews. They wanted photos. But Alina declined. She gave one statement. I did my job, she said. That's all. She didn't want fame. She wanted peace. Admiral Sterling offered her a job, a position in the Department of Defense, a consultant role, high pay, high status. Alina considered it, but she shook her head. I'm a nurse, she said. I want to stay in the ER, but not here. Sterling understood. He helped her transfer to a veterans hospital, a place where her skills were valued, where her past was respected. On her last day at St. Jude's, the staff threw her a party, not because they liked her, but because they respected her. Sarah, the charge nurse, hugged her. I'm sorry, Sarah said, for everything. Alina forgave her. She walked out of the hospital. The sun was shining, the rain had stopped. She got into her car, she drove to the waterfront. She sat on a bench, she watched the ships go by. Agent Miller approached her. He sat down beside her. What now? He asked. Now, Alina said, I live. She took a deep breath. The air smelled of salt and freedom. She was no longer Echo 7. She was no longer the quiet nurse. She was Alina Vance, and she was enough. This story is a testament to the power of integrity. Even when the world tries to silence you, your competence will speak for itself. If this message resonated with you, please share it. Spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe. We have many more stories to tell. But let's dig deeper. Let's look at the emotional arc. Alina's journey wasn't just about defeating Thorne, it was about forgiving herself. For 5 years, she had punished herself for a failure that wasn't hers. She had hidden her light. She had dimmed her voice. Thorne's abuse was a mirror. It reflected her own self-loathing. She allowed him to mistreat her because she believed she deserved it. But saving the Admiral changed that. It reminded her of who she was. It reminded her that she was capable, that she was valuable, that she was a healer. And when she stood up in that boardroom, she wasn't just exposing Thorne. She was reclaiming her identity. That's the real victory, not the arrest, not the headlines, but the internal shift. The moment she realized she didn't have to hide anymore. We often think of heroes as people who wear capes, but real heroes are people who show up, who do the work, who speak the truth even when it's hard. Alina is one of those heroes, and so are you in your own way. If you've ever felt like Alina, know this, your voice matters. Your skills matter, you matter. Don't let anyone silence you. Let's talk about the antagonist. Dr. Thorne wasn't a cartoon villain. He was a product of a system that rewards arrogance and punishes humility. He was insecure, he was afraid, and he used his power to protect his ego. This is a common dynamic in workplaces, in hospitals, in corporations, in schools. The lesson here isn't just about one bad doctor. It's about the culture that allows him to thrive. We need to create cultures where questioning is encouraged, where humility is valued, where truth is more important than rank. Alina changed the culture at St. Jude S., not by fighting, but by being undeniable. What about the Admiral? Why did he matter? He represented authority, but not the abusive kind, the protective kind, he, us. It is power to lift Alina up, not to crush her. He validated her, he gave her a platform. This is the role of true leadership, to recognize talent, to protect the vulnerable, to seek justice. Sterling wasn't just a patient, he was a catalyst. Pause. And Agent Miller, he was the bridge. He connected the past to the present, he knew the truth, and he waited for the right moment to reveal it. He trusted Alina, he gave her the tools, but he let her make the choice. That's respect. The ending, was it satisfying? Some might say it was too neat. Thorne arrested, Alina vindicated. But life isn't always neat. Sometimes the bad guys win. Sometimes the good guys lose. But in stories, we need hope. We need to believe that justice is possible. And in this case, it was. Because Alina refused to give up. Pause. Let's reflect on the title. She risked everything to save a life and paid a price no one expected. The price wasn't firing. It wasn't humiliation. The price was her silence, her isolation, her guilt. But the reward was her voice, her connection, her peace. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, for caring, for engaging. Please, if you enjoyed this story, subscribe, hit the bell, like the video, comment below. Tell us, have you ever been underestimated? How did you handle it? Your stories inspire us. We are the Code Whisperers. We tell stories of justice, of competence, of humanity.